Games can be a community experience, a way to learn and gain insight. The history of Monopoly sets the stage to introduce Buckminster Fuller's concept for a world game and to explore how to invent our next game, inspired by these two great classics. The seed for Monopoly came from Henry George's 1879 best-selling book, Progress and Poverty, which sold 3 million copies. Henry George thought that an increase in the wealth of the 1% would lead to an increase in poverty of the 99%. The game Monopoly originated when Lizzie Magie was inspired to invent a game to teach Henry George's ideas. She was granted a U.S. patent in 1904 for her original invention of a game designed to show players the economic problems of monopolies. She took her patent and game design to Parker Brothers, who said, we're not interested. In 1906, Lizzie Magie formed the Economic Game Company to self-publish her game, called The Landlord's Game. The game included properties like Beggarman's Court and Soakham Lighting System. In the upper left-hand corner was Lord Blueblood's estate, which funded free public college. Utilities and railroads were also free. The game started in the upper right-hand corner of this board on the square called Mother Earth. In 1910, Professor Scott Nearing at the University of Pennsylvania introduced Lizzie Magie's Landlord's Game as a teaching tool in the Wharton School of Finance. Lizzie Magie's concept was so good that it inspired many versions of Monopoly on hand-drawn game boards. Maggie was a Quaker, and she introduced her game to her congregation. The Quakers loved it, and gradually the game spread from city to city, first played in Quaker congregations in each town. In 1913, a game called Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit was modeled on Maggie's game. In 1924, Lizzie Magie applied for a second patent, this time with 2 sets of rules, one to teach Henry George's principles, and a second to illustrate a capitalist monopolistic system. She now went to Parker Brothers with 2 patents and multiple game designs. And Parker Brothers again said, we're not interested. In 1932, Dan Lehman's finance game was produced by Electronic Laboratories, and its similarity to Maggie's game is obvious. In many cities, the game board was hand-drawn with wax crayon on oilcloth. Players changed the board in each city to reflect the special places and issues of their town, customizing the game in each town where it was played and engaging the collaborative intelligence of all players. This Atlantic City oilcloth board was drawn by Charles Todd in 1933. He introduced the game to an unemployed radiator repairman named Charles Darrow. As Todd later recalled, the first people we taught the game to, after learning it ourselves, were Darrow and his wife Esther. It was entirely new to them. Darrow asked me if I would write up the rules, and I wrote them up and gave them to Darrow. Darrow secured his own game board and filed for his own patent. The following year, Charles Darrow took his patent and game board to Parker Brothers, and Parker Brothers said, "This is a fantastic game. We love it." They paid for the rights to use Darrow's patent, sent the game down to their graphic design department, and this look and feel with the greenhouses and red hotels remains nearly the same as when Parker Brothers launched Monopoly in 1935. But Parker Brothers knew that a woman named Lizzie Magie had repeatedly offered to sell them her 2 patents on this game, and her game boards did look quite a lot like Parker Brothers' game board. So Parker Brothers decided they should do something. They offered Lizzie Magie $500 for her patents. In this 1936 interview, the Washington Star asked Lizzie Magie how she felt about being paid $500 when her original concept was making millions for Charles Darrow and Parker Brothers. And she said, "This game can teach people about the hazards of monopolies. So regardless of how little I'm paid, If Parker Brothers now issues a version of the game that shows the problems of monopolies, I'll be glad. Parker Brothers did issue a so-called landlord's game in 1939 that looked very different from Lizzie Maggie's patents, which they had copied for Monopoly. But Lizzie Maggie's original intent for the game was not entirely forgotten. In the 1970s, Ralph Ansbach, an economics professor at San Francisco State University and also a Holocaust survivor, invented the game Anti-Monopoly to teach his students the problems caused by monopolies. His game spread as a teaching tool to other universities, Carnegie Mellon, Wharton School of Finance, the University of Chicago, and so on. Ansbach sold 500,000 anti-monopoly games in Europe. This is the French version. He sold only 10% as many in the US, where Parker Brothers had a sort of monopoly. As anti-monopoly gained momentum and increased in sales, Parker Brothers took notice. They filed a lawsuit against Ralph Ansbach and accused him of infringing on their monopoly of monopoly. Ansbach fought back. In his research, he rediscovered the forgotten Lizzie Maggie. He managed to find a number of very old Quakers who testified that Charles Darrow was not the original inventor of Monopoly, that a woman named Lizzie Maggie was the real inventor of this game, which they had played long before Charles Darrow pretended that he was the inventor and sold the game to Parker Brothers. Ansbach took his case against Parker Brothers all the way to the Supreme Court, and in 1983 he won his battle in the Supreme Court, overturning Parker Brothers' monopoly on monopoly. Several decades later, the Occupy Wall Street movement picked up the game. Here's an online version where, if you can't pay your mortgage, you go to jail, go directly to jail. The Monopoly man became a devil in a tuxedo, and there was a new game, Plutocracy. Then he was a picketer, and the game was Occupy USA. The mystery artist Banksy took his Monopoly message to the street. In marches, the Monopoly man said sweetly, "After I take your house, come work in my hotel." And now new Bitcoin versions of the game are being proposed. This history sets the stage for World Game, which was first proposed by Buckminster Fuller in 1961 as a learning game so students could actively discover how to make the world work for 100% of humanity without ecological offense. Here a group of school children plays the game, which was played in large gymnasia by people ranging in age from 8 to 80.
So now you got the world. Now turn the lights off and now take a look. So how does this feel? Fair? All right, Sherry, I want to talk to you guys over here. You've got a couple of living room units, but where's your electricity?
You got natural light.
I want to listen to you guys. How does it feel to be over there? This is the data, the global data. Who has the power?
We do.
Yeah,
but everybody's looking at us.
Are they thinking loving, abundant thoughts about you guys?
No, they're not.
But this world game concept needed the public internet and smart devices to realize Buckminster Fuller's vision for a global problem-solving tool accessible to all. Monopoly and World Game can inspire a next-generation social network and global community game called earthDECKS, where we'll share with other species the grand challenge to save Spaceship Earth for future generations. This next game starts as a community innovation experiment.